Good evening. My name's Councillor Paul Richards, and I'd like to welcome members of the public, colleagues and officers to this meeting. I'm chairing tonight's meeting, and to manage the business as efficiently as possible, I would invite people to speak one at a time to ensure their contributions are properly heard. Therefore, please do not speak unless invited to do so by me. Thank you in advance for your assistance. Fire evacuation procedure. We don't have any members of the public in, so the fire evacuation procedure is the same as usual. Thank you. Agenda item 1, communications and apologies. We have one apology for absence, and that's Councillor Jeremy Newmark, who is currently at a District Council Network meeting discussing devolution, a topic of which I'm sure we will have some great visibility of over the coming weeks and months. So he felt he needed to attend that. Agenda item 2, presentation of petitions. There have been no petitions received. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare, please? No? Okay, thank you very much. No declarations. Agenda item 4, speeches by non-cabinet members. I see we have Councillor Bright. Very welcome to the meeting. So the usual rules won't be an issue in terms of non-cabinet members are able to speak for maximum of 3 minutes on any item, with a maximum of 5 members per item. We are nowhere near 5 members, or 2 from any group, one group. Agenda item 5, minutes of the previous meeting. In accordance with the Constitution, no discussion shall take place upon the minutes except upon their accuracy. Are members happy to agree to sign the minutes which were circulated beforehand for the meetings held on the 26th of February 2025 and the 6th of March 2025? Fantastic. The minutes are agreed. We should get them signed at the end of this meeting. Agenda item 6, recommendations from scrutiny committees. There were no recommendations received by Cabinet from the scrutiny committees. Agenda item 7, key decisions. Agenda item 7.1, regeneration for growth, incorporating the local plan update. If I could ask, I believe it will be presented by Councillor Oakley, Cabinet Member for Planning.
Thank you, Chair. Members may recall that at the last full council meeting, there was a resolution to refer back both the LDS and the regeneration plans to the members' planning panel. That happened a couple of weeks ago, and we have taken members' views on both the regeneration plan and the LDS. So we are bringing the recommendation forward to Cabinet tonight in relation to this particular part of our forward planning for the draft local plan. Now, it won't have gone unnoticed by anybody in this room that there was a change in national government, and with it, the aspiration to build 1.5 million additional homes during this particular Parliament. Now, that actually meant a huge uplift in numbers for this authority. In our previous draft local plan that we put out to consultation last year, we were looking to deliver about 9,500 homes in order to protect the green belt. We actually devised a strategy which looked at what we could deliver rather than meeting the full government figures. Now, as a result of the changes to the standard method, we now have to find land for an additional 43% of houses in the borough, bringing it up to just over 18,000. Now, the cornerstone of our draft local plan has always been about using brownfield development, having a new settlement, and minimising the use of greenbelt land as much as we possibly could. Now, the uplift in housing numbers presents a significant challenge to us. And so, basically, the way forward is to revisit brownfield sites that were in the draft local plan, and in particular, to look at the regeneration of our two key town centre sites, being Boreham Wood and Potters Bar. Members will also know that as a separate activity, asset management had already started looking at the Elstree Way corridor and the regeneration of that. So we have extended that line of thought to actually implement a bigger scheme and to incorporate Potters Bar into that, based around the Canada Life site. So what we're seeking here is to get the funding to procure master plans for both of those town centres, the need to effectively ensure that these schemes are planning driven, because it's not simply about housing numbers, it's about placemaking. It's about looking at this from a holistic point of view and redesigning town centres that are suitable to the needs of our residents over a considerable period of time, in fact up to 2040. So there are three key recommendations here. We're looking at asking for funding to procure these master plans, but also to fund extra resources within the planning policy team, which is a very small team, and we need extra staff in there. So 3 parts to this recommendation. One is about the procurement for both of these master plans. The second recommendation relates to the funding of up to just over £2 million, because we believe that these are the actual costs associated in procuring and delivering this exercise. And it also includes a lot of the base work towards the delivery of the revised local plan. And we are looking to recommending to council for funding of £203,300 for the Part 1 outline business case.
Thank you, Councillor Oakley. I'm going to invite non-cabinet members. Councillor Bright.
Councillor Richards, how lovely to see you getting used to your potential new role. It's a bit like in the House of Commons, you know. If I'd known in advance, I would have sent my deputy, because you know what it's like when the Prime Minister, whoever it is, can't make it, the deputy. If I'd known that, I would have spoken to Caroline, and you'd probably been a lot happy to see her. It's lovely to see you in that position, by the way, and anything I can do to assist you in your new job is great. I must say, thank you for sending apologies from the Leader of the Council. I think it's an interesting debate as to whether or not you have a document coming forward that has a suggestion to go to Council for over £2 million, which is about 30%. It's 30% of council tax in one bite, and whether or not we're looking at homes for the future and the future of our borough and district. I think the leader should be actually at the home of the district and the borough, talking about the future of the district and the borough for when it's gone, when the Labour lot are getting rid of it. We should be looking after our own people, not necessarily taking part in bigger debates about other people's boroughs and districts. But I know it's a difficult one, and it'll be interesting to hear what comes out of the DCN. Councillor Oakley admits very clearly that it's very difficult. These numbers, 43%, she quotes. She talks about the 18,000 homes that need to be built, as you'll remember, under the Conservative plans, which we shelved, because we listened to residents. It was 12,000, so it's about 12,789 actually, and Labour's 18,000. So when she says it's a significant challenge, it is indeed. We're talking about regeneration for 2 town centres, Bournemouth and Potters Bar. Actually, it's not the town centre of Bournemouth, it's actually the Elstree Way corridor, as we pointed out recently. I think people were expecting it to actually be the High Street and so on. And Potters Bar, we don't have enough detail yet to understand whether or not, and don't forget Potters Bar has 2 town centres effectively. So it's quite a complicated one, and it would be very interesting to get more detail, particularly when we're asking for so much money from the council. The only thing that troubles me slightly is that, well, it's not the only thing, but there's other things, but bearing in mind, we're supposed to work out in advance where everything is going to be, and then we can work out what to regenerate. We've got to have numbers for the local plan, and my concern, and with Grey Belt coming forward as well, my concern is that actually we're putting the cart before the horse here, and we did say this at full council. We are troubled that these matters aren't separate, and we did our very best and got a bit of support from others and other parties to do so, but we are where we are, and we'll discuss it again at full council. My question is, we're hearing about Bournemouth and Potters Bar. What can the portfolio holder tell us about her plans or the Cabinet's plans for Bushy, please?
Thank you, Councillor Bright. Are you okay to respond on that, Councillor Oakley?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I presume, Councillor Bright, that you've had a report back from the meeting of Bushy Forum last night. I thought that might be the case. Your party were incredibly quiet last night. They didn't seem to have much to say at all. Well, possibly. Possibly they were listening. Yeah, that's true. They weren't interrupting, as it happens. What was raised last night were, there was a lot of scaremongering going on with a flyer that was circulated to residents, implying that the lack of a local plan meant that Bushy would automatically have 3,000 new homes in it. And I needed to explain to residents that speculative applications can come in at any time. They're not dependent on whether there is or there isn't a draft local plan, but it certainly provides food for thought for opportunist developers. There are some things we know for certain. One is the redevelopment of part of the old Bushy Golf and Country Club, something that was started by your own administration that we are carrying on with. That will be delivering round about 200 homes, a beautiful new community hub to be shared amongst various organisations in Bushy. On top of that, we have either applications that are in or are about to come in for 3 key sites in the Green Belt that were in your draft local plan, but because of the significance to the Green Belt that they actually perform, I took out of our draft local plan. So those applications will be dealt with in the normal way by the Planning Committee. We're still waiting for Compass Park to come in. We also have another planning application in at the moment for another former golf course, partly pre-developed land at Bushy Hall. That will come to committee in April or May, and again the Planning Committee will determine whether that application is suitable for that particular site. It's not in the draft local plan, but it would almost certainly be considered as grey belt under the new definitions of green belt that the government have actually given us. So our plans are based around existing applications, but I've made it very clear to the residents of Bushy that the housing land or the housing numbers that we had in the draft local plan last year were not sustainable. 378, I told them that we would need to be looking for additional sites that we could use, and that is still my position.
Thank you, Councillor Oakley. Before I open up to other cabinet members, I'd also like to pick up a couple of points. I also attended Bushy Forum. It was very, very well attended. I have to say that the interest within the Bushy community around planning is very heightened at the moment. A lot of residents were able to speak, voice concerns, and it was good to listen. One of those residents was a young man. I didn't catch his name, unfortunately, but he was, I think, early 20s. Distinctly different from the kind of the average demographic within Bushy Forum, as he was so young. And he spoke incredibly eloquently about the need not just to say no to everything, but that, ultimately our next generations and the generation after that will not thank us if we don't give them the opportunity to live nearby and to remain in Hertsmere. They shouldn't just have the option to leave our district and go somewhere else. So he was incredibly eloquent. The other thing I wanted to say is, in terms of the leader not being in attendance today at Cabinet, unfortunately, devolution and local government reform is the prism through which we are, having to look through pretty much every aspect of council service and the way council works. So I would tend to agree with him that it is important that Hertsmere had representation to stick up for our local residents in that forum. In terms of your point, Councillor Bright, about only focusing visibly on the immediate area around the civic offices and not being about Boreham Wood Town Centre, it is absolutely the intent to look at the overall town centre. The reason that the outline business case initially talks about this immediate area is that work's already been done, so it's not a standing start in that regard. I think just to hand over if Councillor Gray, if you have a.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think this is a very exciting prospect for both Potters Bar and for Boreham Wood. I was at the members' planning panel. We had quite a good discussion around this topic, and it was interesting to hear some of the members' kind of comments. I think one councillor kind of said that they like the kind of rows of shops, rows of offices on top of them, and then housing on top of that. And yes, that is one view, and that might be one view that people have wedded to, but it's suboptimal, as Boreham Wood High Street shows us. With my ED hat on and the work we're doing with the businesses in Boreham Wood, especially around kind of the town centre planning and the regeneration of Boreham Wood's High Street, they fully accept that what's there could be a lot better. They are keen to see a regenerative-led kind of space, whatever you want to call it, but a multi-use kind of a proposal for Boreham Wood. It's a very functional high street, and I'm not saying it isn't, but 65% to 70% of the cars that drive through it are not conducting any business on the high street. It's just a traffic route. And Potters Bar, similar situation, but probably doubled because we have two high streets. So therefore, this is a once in a lifetime chance to actually seize the nettle, get the experts in, and look how we make places future-proof for the next generation, rather than leaving what we've kind of had for previous generations.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we're clearly working in a very rapidly changing situation, and this is absolutely the right thing to do, that we look at all the opportunities which exist, we look at how we combine those opportunities with growth in the borough. So, I certainly fully support this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Any other Cabinet members with questions or comments, please? No? Okay. The only other thing that I wanted to point out then before so certainly the discussion will be had in full council subject to Cabinet agreement, so we shall look forward to further discussions on this. In terms of the recommendations, so we have I just wanted to quickly point out 1.13, there's an erroneous word and, so we need to have that removed. So this is subject to recommendations 1.11, that Cabinet approve and recommend to Council the procurement, development and delivery of a strategic master planning and regeneration-led approach to placemaking for the town centres of Boreham Wood and Potters Bar as part of the Hertsmere local plan to promote growth and meet local needs in response to meeting the requirements of the updated National Planning Policy Framework, NPPF, December 24. 1.12, that Cabinet approve and recommend to Council 25-26 funding requirement of up to 2.062,131 million associated with the estimated resourcing and general expenditure required to procure and deliver the master planning exercise, as well as other appropriate evidence-based work to support delivery of the Hertsmere local plan. And therefore 1.13, the Cabinet approve and recommend to Council the funding of the amount 203,300 for taking forward a Part 1 outline business case for Boreham Wood regeneration. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Moving on then to agenda item 7.2, which is tree and hedgerow strategy for consultation. I'll present this. The report recommends the approval of a draft tree and hedgerow strategy for consultation and follows a motion agreed by Council in September 2024. It's always pleasing to see work to address resident priorities of adding extensive greenery and enhancing both the natural landscape as well as townscape. This borough is providing a platform for increasing biodiversity, especially pleasing as this stems from a motion at full council, which is outlined in Appendix 1. The draft Hertsmere Tree and Hedgerow Strategy, as laid out in Appendix 2 of the report, is extremely detailed and extensive, and we thank the Woodland Trust and other stakeholders for their incredibly helpful input thus far. But the substantive input is still to follow, as the decision before Cabinet today is to approve the strategy to go out for public consultation. Simply planting trees will never be the overnight short-term solution to addressing the impact of climate change. However, integrating the strategy with the Council's local plan, climate change action plan and biodiversity commitments, the tree and hedgerow strategy includes a 16-year action plan to achieve a 7% increase in canopy cover by 2041. The Council also aims to grasp the social, environmental and economic significance of woods and trees, with a focus on enhancing public health and well-being, fostering deeper connections between people and nature by actively promoting and facilitating engagement with our natural landscapes. Extended tree canopy is also key to ensuring more shade as temperatures rise over the next few years, as well as a measure to enhance air quality. The key to success of the strategy and action plan will, like most other things, be partnership working. Embodied within the strategy are the vital links to, on the one hand, the Hertfordshire County's local nature recovery strategy, and on the other hand, the direct involvement of town parish councils, community groups, schools, and through the development of a network of local tree champions. Finally, within the draft strategy paper, there are two annexes. Annex 1, an equally extensive tree management policy, which sets out a consistent and clear approach to the current and future management of trees within parks and open spaces owned by Hertsmere Borough Council, as well as Annex 2, a tree risk management strategy to ensure transparency and ensure a reasonable and proportionate approach to reduce all tree-related risk without an adverse effect on the overall contribution of the tree canopy to the community. And that will be overseen by an internal review as well as external audit. So the public consultation will also include use of a questionnaire on Council's Zen City online consultation platform. And I wholeheartedly recommend this for approval. Do we have any comments, questions from non-Cabinet members, please?
Thank you very much indeed, Deputy Leader. if Seamus Quilty was here, and he's not, he'd be saying, this is motherhood and apple pie, is what he'd say, because he's always saying that. I'm a little troubled, bearing in mind the conversation that was had a few moments ago about the leader being at the discussions around devolution, and we all know that if it goes according to the Labour government's plans, that Hertsmere will be done away with within 2 to 3 years. 2 minimum, 3 probable. And we've got a strategy here that talks about plans over 16 years. I'm not saying we should stop everything we do and wait to be done away with, but it's not as if we're not already seeing this, much of this through Hertfordshire County Council, as in fact I believe Ian Kershaw may have said, Ian Kershaw, where is he, that's in the climate change panel yesterday, that most of our policies here are mirroring Hertfordshire County Council's and are very good. And so it does seem a little bit as though we're spending a lot of officer time on something which is kind of already being done, and maybe it should be being spent elsewhere. And I think there was a question raised there or somewhere about whether or not Hertfordshire County Council would want to continue with their tree planting commitments. I can tell you that already over 1/3 trees have been planted in well over 300, I think it's about 350,000, give or take, and the county is committed to 1 tree per every resident. That is the commitment, 1.2 million minimum. So county are not going to stop the planting, they're going to continue to do it, which I think is a great thing as well. I really do. Very briefly, because I don't want to overstep the time, but we also need to be aware of the effects of planting trees, particularly in roads, avenues and so on, the effects it will have in 20 years on pavements, potentially on gullies and drainage. We have all sorts of issues across the borough as a consequence of trees that were planted, I don't know, maybe in the 50s when houses were built. And so it's not just a case of just putting a tree down. There's a lot of work that's got to go with it. So whatever we can do with other agencies to make sure that, that they're looked after, that would be great. So generally very much in favour, but it does seem a little bit like this is replicating other people's work.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. You know, in terms of tree planting, we don't see benefits of saplings until they are mature. So we have to be talking in a timescale of 16 years to see the real benefits of carbon reduction. Excuse me. So, you know, we can't wait for devolution to see what future shape of local authorities in Hertfordshire are before taking this forward. I do appreciate your comments on the impact on road infrastructure, and, you know, if county had a slightly different approach to highways maintenance and pavements, etc., we might be in a safer space to ensure that the risk mitigation was already in place. But, you know, certainly part of the Annex 2, the tree risk management strategy, will be put in place to ensure that there's no excessive risk of harm to people and property. But thank you for your comments, Councillor Bright. Before I lose my voice, I'm going to take a sip of water and ask if you have any non-cabinet members. Councillor Myers, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Unsurprisingly, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome this report and see our commitment to trees and hedgerows taking a major step forward. This strategy is the result of important work with national organisations like the Woodland Trust and the input of experts and community stakeholders who share our vision for a greener and healthier Hertsmere. When we first initiated these discussions, I knew how vital it was to take a proactive approach to tree planting and protection. Trees are not just a feature of our landscape, they are fundamental to tackling climate change, improving air quality, reducing flood risk, and enhancing biodiversity. They're also part of what makes Hertsmere such a special place to live. This strategy sets out clear, practical steps to expand our tree cover, engage with landowners, support our fantastic tree champions, and ensure that trees and hedgerows are properly managed and protected. Crucially, it also makes sure that planting is done in the right places, with the right species and with the right long-term care in place. By committing to planting at least 10,000 trees a year, mapping our canopy cover and strengthening partnerships across the borough, we are making a real lasting impact. This is just the beginning. The consultation process will give residents, community groups and environmental organisations the chance to shape this strategy even further. I want to thank everyone who's been involved in bringing this forward, particularly Ian Kershaw and Mark Pigeon. And I strongly urge Cabinet colleagues to approve this evening to take it forward to consultation. Let's make Hertsmere a greener, healthier and more sustainable for generations to come. And also, I'm really looking forward to the procurement process for giant cherry trees. I know that they exist. Councillor Clarkson told us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Councillor Gray.
Thank you. With cherry stones the size of cannonballs, it could become a tripping hazard. Look, I fully support this, the paper that we have in front of us this evening. It's a fantastic strategy. I can't agree with Councillor Bright. We all need to play our part in tackling climate change. I'm very welcome of the work that County are doing, but we all have a responsibility. It's not right just to leave it to others. Every single one of us has a responsibility to tackle the dangers of climate change and the impact it's having on future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, I welcome this report. I don't need to list out all the environmental benefits. They're in the report, and Councillor Myers referred to them already. But there's the aesthetic benefits and the feelings of well-being that they bring to the community. And these are actually very important things. The only surprise I have on this report is that we haven't had a tree strategy in place before, so this is long overdue, and I welcome it.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Councillor Oakley.
There's probably not much more to be said, but I absolutely welcome this, and I am delighted that we are going to progress with this number of new trees.
Thank you, Councillor Oakley. But just before I move to the vote, I did actually want to circle back and address one point, Councillor Bright, that you raised in terms of the county's attitude to tree planting and tree strategy. So I chaired the climate action panel, and I do recall the point now, and it was specifically around that I heard about the tree giveaway maybe coming into question in terms of from a funding perspective. That said, Hertsmere, fully participates in the tree giveaway. I wasn't questioning Hertfordshire's overall outlook on tree. That's well understood. Thank you. So, Cabinet colleagues, if I could ask, we have one recommendation in front of us, and that's that the Cabinet approve the draft tree and hedgerow strategy for consultation. Do we have agreement, please? Perfect. Thank you very much indeed for that. We'll now move on to agenda item 7.3, waste and street cleansing depot feasibility study. Again, which I will report, I will present, as it's from my portfolio. So at its meeting in September 2023, the Council agreed a programme of measures to improve recycling and noted future improvements would be brought forward, including depot reconfiguration to support more sustainable fleet options and to respond to demographic growth. So the report before us is to gain approval for a feasibility study to inform options to either develop a new depot site or expand the existing waste collection depot in Cranbourne Road, Potters Bar. The site has been very constrained for a while. Even without the other important changes to waste and recycling, there is the anticipated housing growth, which means additional collection rounds being added. And we also, very importantly, need to ensure that we are able to meet the welfare needs of our staff on sites. The proposals in this report support the transition toward a greener fleet that would allow the Council to reduce its carbon emissions and contribute to tackling climate change and the Council's journey to net zero. The Council's fleet represents one of the Council's more significant Scope 1 emissions, which is another way of saying CO2 emissions that are directly within the council's control. The report at this stage is not directive in terms of which types and types of fuel will be looked at going forward. There are open questions around use of hydrogen, and obviously the current situation in terms of no substation, meaning that we don't currently have the ability to hook up to EV. So this is, these are all important considerations. The total cost of the feasibility studies estimated to be at 100,000, which will be met from the 24-25 revenue underspend within the street scene budgets, and remaining sums held in earmarked reserve to fund the spend in 25-26. Once a successful feasibility study has been concluded and the project moves forward to commissioning the necessary capital works, those feasibility costs will be capitalised and returned to revenue. It's clear doing nothing and hoping for the best is not an option. Even with the spectre of local government reorganisation, waste and recycling services are pivotal to the resident expectations from their local authority. Do we have any, do we have a non-cabinet member contribution, please?
Councillor Richards. Take the two parts slightly separately, because I'm happy to understand and to agree that depot issues have been around for quite some time, and it's quite extraordinary, in fact, that was it 16, 17 months ago now, November 23, you were talking about doing something. 20th of September, agreed a programme of measures and would be brought forward, including depot reconfiguration. And 18 months later, we're only now talking about going out to talk about depot reconfiguration at a time when you're about to change people's collection routines. So, okay, we support the idea because I think it needs to be done, but I think it's very tardy and it's not clever, and it could end up causing problems. I have no choice but to mention your Green Fleet credentials. When you're talking about picking up food waste, great move forward. We can have this discussion about whether or not we should be doing the green bin tax. Park that to one side. That's there. It's happening. But the food waste is going to be collected weekly. Let's say 30,000 homes get it, right? It could be 40,000, could be 45. But even under a conservative with a small C estimate, you're talking 1.5 million collections from people's home every year of food. 1.5 million collections, right? And you're using diesel fuel, a diesel fleet. You cannot sit there and say to me, this is a move forward for our green credentials when you're using a diesel fleet. And that's why there's a little bit of, people are looking at the names, let's call the fleet this, what should we call this, what should we call them? And I said that under the circumstances, name the fleet Van Diesel, because that's what they are. And I think that if we're in a situation where environmentally you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, where's the benefit? There has to be benefit. You talked about trees in the last item. Completely agree. We must do more, you said. We must do more. Not just what county are doing. We've got to do our bit. But you've got to do your bit here. It's a massive failure in policy, but particularly it's a massive failure for the environment. And we will continue to go on about this because there were other opportunities and you didn't take them. And I think it's wrong. And as I've said, where's the benefit of telling people, put your stuff out, we'll collect it, it's better for the environment, but we're going to pick it up with diesel fuel.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. If the previous administration had looked at the constraints on the depot at a far earlier point and had considered alternative fuels at that point, even the ability to fuel a fuel fund within the depot that could look at then potentially biofuels, etc., as an interim step, then possibly we may be in a better situation than we are now. In terms of acquiring the vehicles, acquiring the fleet, we had to do it at that point, having, moved ahead of schedule to introduce a weekly food waste. The overall benefits of doing that are clear in terms of what we do to improve our recycling rates and to address residents' concerns that you know, we need to do our own bit. So I won't take any lectures in terms of, you know, looking after the depot on this one. Thank you. Do we have any cabinet members, please? Questions? No? Okay. Then, in that case, the report requests... bear with me, sorry about this. So the report requests recommendation that Cabinet note the pressures on the existing waste depot, future demand and wider development issues at Cranbourne Road Industrial Estates, and that 1.2 approve the budget of £100,000 for feasibility works to consider options for either a new depot or an expanded depot at Cranbourne Road, Potters Bar. Do we have agreement, please? Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to agenda item 7.4, community sports provision. I understand Councillor Myers, you're able to present this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this report, so the Council provides a number of sports pitches and other play amenities and maintains these via its grounds maintenance contracts. It also has a number of pavilions and changing rooms which are not used, as with many unused buildings have started to have a negative impact on amenity. There are opportunities to work with local community providers to improve this situation, and specific sites are detailed in the report. Basically what this report is looking to do is, give me one sec, let me get into the right part. Yeah, so what this report will be looking to do, it's going to be allow pitches across the borough to be managed locally by clubs, for clubs. It's going to open up all sorts of funding streams through the likes of Sports England and the FA. That at the moment we don't have any access to. Local sports providers will have that access if we go down this route. And as the report states, we have already made inquiries with several clubs, such as Crusaders in Potters Bar, and this initiative has been widely supported with enthusiasm from everyone that officers have spoken to. So what the report is asking us to do, it is a recommendation that the Cabinet agrees an approach to community sports provision which is informed by the concept that better outcomes for residents can be achieved by working with and empowering local community groups to run facilities, and notes proposals to take this forward in respect of specific sites listed in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Do we have non-member question? Non-cabinet member questions, sorry. Apologies.
What's there not to like about this? You know, there's money being given out right, left and centre from SIL to big organisations like football clubs, $1 million to Potters Bar, and then you've also got the park in Bushy. But these are the big organisations, or bigger organisations, and I think that while we've still got some money left in our pots, and I know we'll be looking for funding elsewhere, but of course other organisations like match funding. So, you know, these organisations say, well, if you put half in, we'll put half in, or a third, or whatever it is. I'm very much of the opinion that, and I know that other people here are as well, that if we are going to be done away with in 2-3 years' time, let's make sure we leave a bit of legacy financially and improve facilities really at the grassroots level. And you can't get much more grassroots than this. So, and you know, the organisations don't always have the ability to raise funds for themselves, and it's difficult, and then the facilities either fall out of use, fall to disrepair, or just look mucky and horrible, and people don't want to go and play there, especially the youngsters. So yeah, let's do what we can. Obviously we need to make sure we have the right governance in place to oversee spending and so on these occasions, but I do think this is a very worthwhile idea, and very happy to support.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. For a second there, I thought you were backing up your all-party line with a left, right and centre comment there, so thank you. And I agree, you know, in terms of governance being key, we absolutely see that need as well. I'm going to open it up to Cabinet members. Councillor Matthews, please.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. This seems to me it's an absolute no-brainer. It empowers our communities, it makes better use of facilities, and it enables access to additional funding. As Councillor Bright says, what's not to like?
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Councillor Gray.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll echo the thoughts of all other Cabinet members. What's not to like here? It's a fantastic scheme. It will give grassroots football clubs the chance to kind of run and kind of take ownership of their pitches and actually develop what they want on the sites. We've talked about the governance. I know it's already happening. My only concern is we need to kind of help and support those organisations as we go through the transition and further down the line to make sure that they are set up to actually explore those other funding options and to get other grant monies in to allow them to all flourish. It's just a shame our member champion for football isn't here, because I'm sure he'd have a lot to say on it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Any other Cabinet member comments or questions? No? Okay. In that case, the recommendation before us, 1.1, that Cabinet agrees the approach to community sports provision, which is informed by the concept that better outcomes for residents can be achieved by working with and empowering local community groups to run facilities. And recommendation 1.2, Cabinet notes proposals to take this forward in respect of specific sites listed in the report. Could we have a vote on that, please? Thank you very much indeed, Cabinet colleagues. Moving on to agenda item 7.5, bad debt write-offs 24-25, which is due to be presented by Councillor Chris Shenton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Richards. This report comes to Cabinet a few times a year, 2 or 3 times a year, when we have debts that we consider are no longer will no longer be paid, and it is a prudent financial policy to write them off. You'll see in table in 2.5 that for 23-24, so the last full year, where our target was 98% collection, at the end of that year, for council tax, we collected 96.1, and for business rates, 95.8. Now, after the end of the financial year, we managed to increase this to 98.3 and 99% respectively, which exceeds our target of 98%. So the long tail of COVID and companies and individuals not paying taxes has really been overcome, and we're up to our target rate. For debts less than £5,000, these can be written off by officers and total £372,000. Those debts over £5,000 total £274,000 and are listed in table 1 on page 5. Business write-offs, which we will describe in part 2, because we list the people who are paying, are overwhelmingly companies in administration where we have no opportunity to collect the debts, and so it is prudent for us to write them off. In table 4, you can see that in council tax, the vast majority, well, 40%, sorry, not the majority, 40% of the money being written off are untraceable, and the remainder mostly debt recovery orders where a tribunal has said that that person is no longer able to pay. So the amount of money is fundamentally not traceable anymore. Similarly, with sundry debts in table 6, the vast majority are companies in administration, and again no longer achievable. As I mentioned before, this report is produced more than once in the year, 2 or 3 times a year, and it enables us to accurately account for how much money we are ever going to get back and to write off that which we realistically have never done. So I would recommend this motion to the Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shenton. Non-cabinet members.
I'll go on then. I think this is important for those people who are watching it outside to understand that this is a subject which council takes very seriously. I don't want people to think that, well, okay, if you've written off what sounds like an extraordinary amount of money, particularly in business rates, £1 million, it's like, well, you know, in a small organisation. They need to understand, A, what the bigger picture is, and B, the fact that we have officers in place that really push to recover these funds, and that people who are intentionally trying to deceive will get taken to court and so on. There will always be numbers of people who fall into debt for some bad reason or unfortunate reason or another, and there are other situations that we have, other funds that we put to one side to assist. But this is about write-offs, and all councils have these. I think that it would help to understand better people outside if maybe we had a couple of years' figures, because that displays trends as well. Just like you know what the trends might be sitting in house as it were, it might be interesting just to have a couple of years to see whether or not we're going up or down. It's not a test of whether or not officers are getting more in, but it's actually saying, well, what are the reasons for those? Is it, as you say, long tail of COVID? Is it cost of living crisis? Is it people changing their habits around going out to shops, etc., and business closing? So it would be very useful to inform. And also just to say that I know there's a part 2 item, and just again explain for those people outside, as we do from time to time, that's because there are names that need to be discussed, companies and so on, and you can't do that in the public arena. It's not because anything's being hidden. And as I say, I support our officers on this. I know how hard they work to try and get as much money as they can into the council coffers, and I have great respect for the work they do.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. I know, you know, firsthand, and also with talking with Councillor Shenton, how hard the officers work to exhaust all possibilities. So, you know, it's not a decision that's ever taken lightly. But thank you for your comments. Councillor Shenton.
Thank you, Councillor Richards. Just to kind of reply to Councillor Bright, I agree. Fundamentally, all money that we were just writing off is our residents' money. It's not to be written off lightly. And my guess is that the head of finance is probably bored with the amount of time I hassle him to say, can't we get that back? Can't we get that back? The key figure to me is that we have a reasonable target, which is 98%, and that's similar to other authorities, and we are exceeding that rate of recovery. So yes, we don't take it lightly. It is the taxpayers, the ratepayers, council taxpayers' money. Very important that we pursue all reasonable grounds to retrieve it. Most of the money is from companies going into administration, and once it's gone, it's gone. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shenton. Any other Cabinet colleagues? No? Okay, so the recommendations are to note the current total write-offs for the financial year 24-25 so far approved, amounting to £685,936. The write-offs individually less than 5,000 written off by the Head of Finance under delegated authority. The financial impact to Hertsmere of these write-offs, and that these write-offs are to be funded from the bad debt provisions, and to approve the write-off of bad debts individually in excess of 5,000 and amounting to 1,090,904 in total. Could I ask the Cabinet to vote, please? Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 8, non-key decisions. Agenda item 8.1, Hertsmere Vision Performance Report, Q3 2024-25, which is to be presented by my colleague, Councillor Gray. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The report in front of us today, members, is a recommendation from the Cabinet Review to note the quarterly performance indicator report for Q3 of 24-25. The Cabinet Performance Panel met in February, has fully reviewed the performance report at Appendix A, which captures our high-level performance information across our organisation. It provides progress against the corporate plan over the last quarter, setting out a narrative summary of achievements along with performance information from the key performance indicators set against each priority from the vision. The main body of the report contains further information, however, on 3 indices which have fallen into the red during this period, namely the percentage of household waste sent to reuse, recycling or composting, the percentage of council tax collected, and the percentage of non-domestic rates collected. Councillor Shannon, I'm sure we'll probably have a more detailed discussion when we move into part 2, so I'm not going to ask if you want to make any comments now, but you're more than welcome to. Councillor Richards, you're more than welcome if you want to comment on the waste the household waste reuse, recycling, composting scheme. The key performance indicator E192, the percentage of household waste sent to reuse, recycle or composting, was a Q3 target of 42% against a target of 49%. Now, whilst Hertsmere's recycling rate has stagnated over the last 2 years, the Council has agreed a significant improvement of improving over the medium term. The enforcement of the single black bin policy began in October 2023, and it is influencing resident behaviour. Service focus on recruitment and retention and maintaining collections has been successful and needs to be maintained. And DEFRA has now confirmed the requirements for simpler recycling. Hertsmere anticipated those needs back in September 2023 and is well placed to implement these in advance of the statutory requirements. The Hertsmere weekly food service will be introduced 1 year early in April 2025, and other measures are expected to increase the level of household waste that is recycled. The key variable for Q2 to Q3 is the volume of garden waste produced, which is largely affected by the weather. However, if you look at Q2 and Q3 together, the performance is slightly improved on previous years. FIN 7, the percentage of council tax collected, we had a target of 82%, and the actual figure came in at 81.3%. So whilst this is behind target, the service is confident that the position will improve over the remainder of the year and ultimately will meet the collection targets of 98%, as is now the case for all prior years. 98% either by the end of the year or very soon after is now the case for all the years previously. The team have been looking at new initiatives for collecting debt and has recently started sending text messages to nudge residents into paying, which has proved very successful. And we're also continuing to promote our online direct debit form, which was implemented last year and has seen a marked increase in residents now paying by direct debit. Interestingly, though, we do provide a lot of funding too and work very closely with the Citizens Advice in Hertsmere, who provided advice on our services to ensure our residents are able to get the appropriate support and advice on council tax and other debt. This advice, for example, includes information such as council tax support, available for households on low incomes. Citizens Advice has provided some contextual information recently, which indicated that the level of inquiries in relation to council tax debt are high in Hertsmere, higher than all the other CABs across the whole of Hertfordshire, and remains at that level. Now, council tax debt is considered a priority debt to be paid before debts like credit cards, and typically residents would always try to avoid entering into council tax debt unless they had no other option or choice. That is something that we're going to do a deep dive into with the Citizens Advice and see if there's other ways that the service can provide support to our residents who may temporarily be in financial difficulty. FIN 8, percentage of non-domestic rates collected. We had a target of 84% and the Q3 ended on 80.4%. And again, this figure is below target, but there are a number of factors that need to be taken into account. It should be noticed that Hertsmere have some very large business rate accounts which have significant impact on in-year collection rates. And if payments are received late, for Q3, for example, the service identified 2 large payments received in the first few days of January, which will be picked up in the Q4 figures. That's probably where I'll leave it. We'll probably have a bit more of an in-depth conversation around some of those issues around non-domestic rates and council tax when we move into part 2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Bright?
How did you know I wanted to speak? Funny enough, I do. I'm just having a look here. Look, as I come to the end of my tenure, leadership-wise, I look back at how it was when we first started with Audit Commission and KPIs and indicators that we had to meet. And believe it or not, under the Audit Commission, it was under the Labour government years ago, we had over 200 when we first started. Hilary will remember. And we had over 200, many of which we couldn't actually affect. We couldn't make any change on them at all. You know, how many visitors attend that building? Well, we don't even have that building. It belongs to someone else. Oh, yeah, but, you know, and it was that kind of stuff. So over the years, he managed, of course, the Audit Commission was gone, and then we managed to get the figures down, and we get the indicators down. We've now gotten down to 15, which is pretty good, except when one or two go red, it makes the percentage look really poor. It's good for the headlines for people like me, but it's not very, it's not necessarily a true indicator. 12 are green, 3 are red, and there's nothing amber. My concern, of course, is around household waste. It's E192 in section 5.8. And that's because, and I don't want to be the spectre of the feast or the harbinger of doom all the time when it comes to this, but I do have major concerns that you think you have a silver bullet to deal with this. And we've never found a silver bullet to deal with this because there's certain things you've not addressed. Some things you have addressed is not picking up the second black bin. But that was only 3,500. That was less than 10% of the bins are being picked up. And you also don't know, or we don't necessarily know, unless you could tell us what happened to that waste. Did people just squeeze it down a bit harder? And we don't really know. It's not necessarily true that they would have recycled more. They can't have done because it would have pushed the recycling up by a percentage point, maybe 2. And that doesn't appear to have happened. You've also got the situation around the green bins, and I'd like to ask a question, which I hope will be answered. How many people have now signed up, as of now, to have their green bins collected once the charges come in April, or how many homes, if you don't mind? And what work has been done on flats? Because as I've said to you before, and I've said it again, 20% of our people live in flats. And the problem we had is that we weren't doing enough to secure recycling in flats. And if you take 20% of the population, right, 1 in 5, right, and they're not recycling properly because a lot of these places aren't, because of whoever looks after the blocks, etc., it's very difficult to increase the percentage in the way that you need to, because 1 in 5 people aren't recycling properly. And so my second question is, first question is how many people signed up to the green bin payment, and my second question is what work has been done and will continue to be done to try and get recycling up in flats. 20% of the people live in flats. It's not being done properly, and the numbers cannot increase until such time as we get those sorted out. And in a year's time, we'll be having a question about if your new policies have worked or not, but that's for another day. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. I'll take the one on recycling for sure. So, I mean, first question, garden waste subscriptions, they are in line with our expectations. I'm just double checking for the most recent number that I might possibly ask Ian Kershaw just to give that number now, actually, if you can.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as of the 11th of March, we had 10,620 signed up for the new subscription, which is well in line with the profile to hit a 60% take-up of all of those eligible. We would expect to see a proportion of people sign up early, and then there will be another peak in sign-up as we approach the end of the financial year, and there will be another peak in sign-up over the Easter holidays, which is a particular use, and then in line with weather. The full subscription we would consider to be mature by the end of July, and that's when we'll know exactly what it is, but it is fully on profile for the 60% that we projected.
Thank
So that is 60% target of the 39,000 curbside properties that we would expect to have a garden.
Thank you, Ian. And to pick up on your other question around recycling in flats, so the situation is more complicated because we don't have the direct relationship from a waste and recycling perspective with the residents. We have the relationship between the council and the managing agent or the landowner, and there is pretty much a case-by-case approach to what works best for them. But we are certainly in terms of, so the weekly food waste collection has been mandated by government to be in place nationally by April 2026. So we're, for curbside recycling, we're a year ahead of that. But for the situation in flats, we will roll that out from summer onwards on that. And in terms of opportunities to work better with managing agents on, existing recycling arrangements, so the dry recycling, etc. There is always that opportunity for conversation to influence how they, how best they communicate with the residents and manage the arrangements on a flat apartment on a property by property basis, I should say. So thank you very much. I'm going to ask Councillor Gray if he has anything to add on that directly, please.
Not very much, no, and I agree, weirdly, with Councillor Bright, but I think flats are always going to be the hard nut to crack. I think where the focus has been retrospectively looking back, because this is what this piece does, it looks back at the history of where we are, not what we're going for in the future. It kind of, we stabilised the waste collection services. We now have fully trained, fully staffed up waste collection services. That's borne out by the number of miscollections. They're going down constantly quarter on quarter. So we're fulfilling the rounds, which is a big help. Secondly, the single black bin policy. All right, it may not be popular with some people, but it has worked. In the flats that I live in, we saw a decrease in the number of general waste bins, the big, large things. So I live in a flat, and people kind of adapted to that, but we saw a much bigger increase in the recycling that takes place in our area. And people kind of now getting that education piece. I agree with Councillor Richards, however, though it does need to be done on a kind of case-by-case basis, because if you get a load of tenants together in a certain block of flats who are interested and want to do their bit, they will, but it's how we capture those that don't in that regard. That's probably where I'll leave it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Before I hand over to see if there are any other comments or questions from Cabinet colleagues, the other point that I missed off from the single black bin policy, it's not that the policy began in October 2023, it's the enforcement of the policy. The policy actually relates to the previous administration, which we mustn't forget. So thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Any other Cabinet colleague comments, please, or questions? No? Okay. So we have before us the agree. Oh, thank you very much. The recommendation is that Cabinet review and note the quarterly performance indicator report attached at Appendix A, ahead of consideration. I should say at full council, I believe. Ahead of apologies. Yeah. Let me state the recommendation again. Apologies. Cabinet review and note the quarterly performance indicator report attached to Appendix A ahead of consideration at full council in March of later 2025, later on this month, in effect. Thank you. Do we have agreement, please? Great. We got there in the end. Thank you. Agenda item 8.2, community skips. This report sets out proposals to achieve a trial of community skips as a result of a motion calling for Cabinet to instruct this being passed at full council earlier this year in January. The full motion is attached within the report, but certainly highlights really, I think it's safe to say that amongst the joint administration, the first, certainly one of the first things that our Labour colleagues were very keen to explore and to put in place. And I think, to be completely candid, it won me round to the message, because at first I was a little bit sceptical, for reasons of, in effect, not wanting to encourage additional kind of trade wastes. So making, I think, this much more about community spirit and the opportunity for our CEO to play a part in talking about recycling, talking about council services more generally, but obviously also the opportunity for residents that might otherwise not have the transport to take their bulky waste to the recycling centres, and we are absolutely aligning this to the first event being to coincide with the event later on in March, and sorry, lost my train of thought. Apologies. So there's, in effect, I've been, one round to the idea of community skip provision. This is a pilot scheme. We will obviously evaluate as we go. We will, ensure that the communications around this are on a hyper-local basis, so that there isn't the risk of, trade waste being brought from across the borough. And I think we shall really be looking at, other sites as we go, keeping an open mind as to how this goes. And yeah, I think this is again another great example of a motion that's come forward through full council that we are putting in place. So I really welcome this. And Councillor Bright, do you have any comments, questions? I shall. Thank you very much. I'll keep giving the opportunity to Councillor Myers if he wants to say anything. Doesn't have to.
I can say something now. I was going to wait until after the Leader of Opposition, but I'm more than happy to. Thank you very much, sir. So obviously, it goes without saying that I welcome this report. It follows from the motion that Councillor Richards has mentioned earlier. We know that fly tipping remains a serious issue across Hertsmere, and while we have made some real progress through enforcement, cameras, community involvement, we know there's still much to do. The Community Skips Initiative is a proactive step in tackling the problem, particularly for residents who may struggle to access cycling centres. By trialling strategically placed skips, we can assess their effectiveness in reducing fly tipping and making waste disposal easier for residents. The initiative is about working with our communities. Getting education is going to be key to this. Our CEOs on site educating alongside other partner agencies, our residents in these areas, and providing practical solutions and ensuring our neighbourhoods are cleaner and safer. I look forward to seeing the findings of this trial and how we can build on it in the future. And I fully support the recommendations in this report and encourage my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Councillor Bright.
Don't thank me, it was on the agenda. I've got the head of legal here. No, thank you for that, Chris, Councillor Myers. Look, this is a really interesting one. It's an especially to hear that the Deputy Leader's been one round on this. I think he was hedging his bets a bit. I was listening to his wording very carefully, because it could get quite complicated, this. First of all, I'm not sure that I like, and I've read some of the wording, I'm not sure that I like some of the wording around should hopefully prevent some localised fly tipping. And the reason is because, I don't know about you guys, but if I had an item that I couldn't get rid of, I wouldn't go and chuck it in the street. I wouldn't fly tip it. And it's almost saying that if we don't give them something, people are going to commit behaviour which is illegal and criminal. And so I'm not too sure that we want to go down that route. I do understand there are people who can't necessarily get to recycling centres, and that leads me to the point of what happens to the stuff that goes in the skips. Firstly, we've got to make sure people don't get injured. But, oh, I'll have that, and trying to pull that out and all kinds of stuff. We must make sure we're insured against that. But also, when you go to a recycling centre, you put it in the various different places, etc. Whereas this stuff's all going in together. So how much is that going to cost us? Do we have to send it to a MRF, material recycling facility, and so on? And as I've said, I think we are going to have to monitor this, because you know what it's like. The moment a skip is out there in the dark, everyone's mattresses. So we've seen that before. But as I say, anything that we can do to keep our streets cleaner is great. Obviously, you guys will also, like me, have concerns around the back of shops, which are not covered by the skips. Back of Manor Way at the moment, and the back of Clown Down. It's just shocking, rats and everything down there. So we don't just want to cover the areas that we can see, we want to work on areas that we can't as well, and we need to get the shops involved in that, but that's a different argument. So I welcome the trial. It will be very interesting to see the follow-up from that and what we need to learn, and I don't think we should necessarily be put off if things don't necessarily go right the first time, because it may take a while to get this one right. But I like the principles of it. I'm just hope that it pans out the way that officers think it might.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. Handing over to apologies. Handing over to Cabinet colleagues. Councillor Gray.
Thank you. And Councillor Bright, I think you're right. This is a trial. We are just trying to explore something different to see if it has an impact. I agree. Most residents, like myself, would not get rid of a washing machine just by dumping it on the side of the road and hoping for the best. And I don't think many of our residents do that. What I think the piece that is missing, though, is that they're paying somebody £20 or £30 to take it away, thinking that it's going to the right place, and we all know it ends up in Rowley Lane or wherever the hotspots may be. So I see it as a great opportunity to actually do some positive education pieces around those kind of areas where you see a lot of a kind of build-up of stuff that is just there waiting to go to recycling centres, etc. Also, just to put your mind at rest, that they will be manned not 24/7, because they'll be taken in the morning, taken away in the evenings, etc. Staff will be there at all times. In fact, I'll even get you a high-vis vest printed up, and we can stand there together, chucking washing machines into the back of these skips. It's not a problem at all. We can sort it. So they will be manned, because that's the most important piece of this, is actually having that interaction with the resident, kind of talking to them about how the recycling can happen, all the options to recycle their waste, and equally that kind of piece around what the reasonable charge for somebody to come and collect it off your drive and take it away looks like, rather than maybe 15, 20 quid. Because I don't think a lot of people do it out of malice. I just think, you know, they just got time pressures, money pressures, etc., and they think they're doing the right thing, but we all know where it ends up.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Myers, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Gray has picked up on what I was going to say anyway. It was about the skips being left overnight. There won't be skips left overnight. The whole idea is there are skip days with having CEOs and partner agencies on site. We're not leaving skips in the middle of the road for all and sundry. That's not the idea.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. And just to go back and correct my misremembering of the event that will be taking place. So the first trial will be to coincide with the Great British Spring Clean. So very, very important to point that out. Any other Cabinet colleague questions or comments, please? No? Okay, in that case, the recommendation to vote on is that the Cabinet agree proposals for a trial scheme involving community skips and neighbourhood clean-up events. 1.2, the trial will focus on, to note that the trial will focus on areas that score more highly in terms of greater social deprivation. And 1.3, to note that the measures to assess the effectiveness and efficiency of the trial and potential to scale up. Do we have agreement, please? Perfect. Thank you very much indeed for that. And that completes agenda item 8. Moving on to agenda item 9. Any other business that the Chair considers urgent? There is none. Agenda item 10, date of next meeting. The next meeting of the Cabinet is scheduled for 6 p.m. on the 2nd of April 2025. And we now need to move to agenda item 11, exclusion of the public.